Well, the job is going to be replacing these jib track cars. The old one, as you can see, perhaps has completely rotted out. Now, you wouldn't think that would be possible for plastic to rot, but the tropical sun here in Florida is merciless. Now, there were several other solutions to this, none of which I was particularly like. They involve grinding off these rivets and replacing the block using the usual pin and clip. The other one was to save the block and grind this one out and just replace the sheave there, but I don't know. This rail is 4 foot long and there's 17 bolts on each rail, and it just seems to me that is an awful lot of stress that's going to be put on these blocks. I'm not comfortable trying to cobble something together that, if it fails, could certainly have disastrous consequences. So I began the search. I began a year-long search, if you really want to know the truth about it. Now, along the way on this great search, I found the company called Garhar, which most of you are familiar with. That's in California. They make a block that won't set you back too much compared to the others. But when I got the Garhar home, it would not fit on this track. Completely different design. So I searched around trying to find another method. I came across this little gem at a nautical flea market, and as you can see, spent some significant dollars on it. There's two of them. And of course, it won't fit on the track that's currently on the hideaway. So I went to our local marine center here and took these blocks with me, and they had nothing that would fit it. So I gave up all hope and called Garhar back, mindful that I'm in Florida, they're in California, and I bought two 8 or 4 foot sections of their T1 rail, is how they identified it, and both of these blocks will fit just fine. So we're going to decide which one we want to keep. Most likely going to be this one. Now the next work is going to be trying to get the other rail out and these in. One potential issue I discovered after I bought all the bolts was this head. It should have been more flat instead of a bit of a round. But when I put the cars on there, they don't scrape on it. And this does seat pretty well. It does seat pretty well in there, especially when tightened down. So I think we'll probably be all right. If not, we'll have to make up some other way to do it, but I think we'll be fine. Well, when we finally got all the screws out, we find that there's spacers underneath that rail. That shouldn't make any difference because I couldn't find the exact size of bolt to put in here anyway, so the new rail will probably fit just fine. That was a surprise, though. It also explains why there is some leakage on these old bolts and screws. Well, the bottoms of the rails are different. The new rail, which is a darker color, is more of a concave, and then the other older one, and this came with the boat, is of course completely flat. It had some spacers in here to take up that difference, and that was the whole problem. Had this bottom piece not been there, our existing hardware would have been fine, or we would have been able to use hardware that costs a lot less and never would have had to replace the rail. As it is, though, we do have a new rail, real nice, and it's going to be quite an improvement over what we were using before. Whether it's necessary or not on this size boat, it really doesn't matter at this point. That's what we've got. It's much better than what we had. The end of the new rail doesn't work with the existing rail stop or slide stop. As we slide it in, you'll see what happens. And that's as far as it'll go. You can probably go buy the correct one, but really all this does is stop the car from sliding off the end of the track accidentally. Not that you'd ever do it on purpose, but that's the function of this stop. So just cut the tang off and butt the new rail into the end there. It doesn't really have to lock in place because we've got a half a dozen bolts holding the rail in place. The end piece is actually through bolted, so it's not going anywhere either. And frankly, if it does, we've got other things to worry about. Red light?
Yeah.
Okay, adjust this if there's any reflection going on.
It doesn't look like.
Okay, if there isn't, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, now am I straight up and down? Or at least...
Yeah, from this side, but the problem you usually have is
I know.
You go back towards yourself.
Right there? Okay, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, now see if we're in frame.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then I moved it. Keep filming.
Okay.
Now we're drilling these holes just one size smaller than the bolt. That way putting the screw in actually threads the fiberglass, and that should prevent any leaking. If it doesn't, then we get to do this all over again. But we like doing that kind of stuff. Now you may wonder why I'm doing this the old-fashioned way, and in other words, giving myself a sore wrist. That's because my ratchet driver is at home. You remember that. That's where I'm 2.5 seconds away from getting it.
How about the longer bolt?
That is the longer one.
I know, but why?
This is where you wanted it.
I wanted you to explain it to the camera.
Do I have to explain everything?
Yes, why are you using such a long bolt?
Oh, yeah, okay, and that's the case. The reason why this bolt is a 1/2 inch longer is I couldn't find any that were shorter. However, we're going to use these in strategic places and then stretch maybe a net from here to down there someplace and store stuff in it. Have no idea what, but we always have a lot of stuff, so it's a good place to store. Well, we found that the pan head screws were a little bit too much of a pan. The track cars would catch on some of them. So we went to the local marine establishment instead of our local lumberyard and found some flathead bolts. Thinking quickly on my feet, which is generally not a good place to do that, I could not remember the length of the bolts. So, rather than be on the short end of things, I decided to be on the long end, and we now have 22 long screws with which to hang various things. I'm sure our tacks will be better, will be much faster, and the world will be a better place now that we have our California track cars and our California track.